Yeah, thanks everyone for joining our first electrical safety community monthly call. So this is post our Global Electrical Safety Conference in October, which hopefully everyone on the call came to or knew someone that came to. So an introduction to what we're doing and what this is, hopefully. So at the conference, it was an amazing event, really good. There was, some really good collaboration. There was a really good master of ceremonies there on on show there in that slide. Yeah, it was a really good conference. There's some really good collaboration going on throughout the whole event. It was non-commercial, obviously, so there was no sales pitches. It was purely content and then discussion on a sort of 50-50 split, which was brilliant, which then generated a lot of idea sharing, but more importantly, experiences. We've got such a split in the room across from construction, commissioning, and operations, and then data centers in technical functions and safety functions. So it was a really good balance. And the drive and enthusiasm that happens in that period of time is just, everyone's trying to do the right thing and what better, reflect on where they are. And a lot of the good things is acknowledging you're not alone. There's other people as well that are in that same place as yourself, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. You can often feel isolated when you're in industry. But unfortunately, then we have an end of conference. So, it was really good to see. But then typically from past experience, the doors close and then you go back to firefighting, your general operational role, and it takes actual electrical safety side that we're trying to work on. We're trying to make things better. So how we came to this project, I guess, was in the initial build up to the conference. We had a lot of really knowledgeable and talented people on the panels, as you saw, and in those conversations on the build up, a lot of it was, wow, this is really good content, and how it linked all together with all the other topics. It's clear there's some clear links there around industry, not just data centers, but everywhere, but specifically for our area and our field of expertise, it was a really good discussion, and you could already see it was how can we continue this on? And I think a bit of networking, bit of discussion on day one, and it was mooted as an idea possibly to continue this on and create a forum like this where we could take time out of what we're doing, come together and try and keep that positive intent going that we discussed before. So the purpose of what we're trying to do is we're going to try and take all that good stuff we mentioned, that collaboration and the sharing of ideas and experiences and that drive, and hopefully come together once a month in this forum to identify basically the themes. We looked at what the key themes were because you could talk about electrical safety all day in some way or another. But essentially, on day two, we did a lessons learned segment at the themes, what the key takeaways were from the conference, what you were going to take back to your businesses and your organizations. Obviously, the themes of the content and the general network and what people came back with. So we've kind of looked at those and established a steering group to look a bit more in depth around trends within their industries. So those key themes, we've tried to pick those as top level gaps that we've got in the industry at the moment. And then underneath there, just look at the initial couple of actions that we can tangibly work on with the aim of, being able to collaborate and share standards, information, and hopefully try and standardize where we can. So on these calls, just I suppose a bit of housekeeping. We've opened it up to everyone that was at the conference, but I think we've just discussed there prior to joining how we can have that so we can send it out to the wider community if you guys wanted to send on a link. So we're going to have a look at how that works. Is that just going to be done for the next call, Ben?
Yep, correct. Yep. So I'll organize that for the next call for everyone to use.
Yeah. So after each call that we do have, you'll get a recording sent of what was done. We'll also be looking to do a post-call survey. So if you didn't manage to get your point across, or if there's something that you specifically want from this community, what you can put in there, and then we can discuss or look to either incorporate or make it an action as part of what we do. We'll be creating minutes like we would from any meeting, just so we can track like where we're getting up to. As you can appreciate, there was 338 attendees at the conference. So we've had to try and do it in a function and a platform where we're not going to have 338 speaking across. So we've established a steering group at the moment, which is here. Then your intention is going to be, if we'll open it up, and if you just raise your hand, and Ben can unmute you, and hopefully we can get some good discussion going. If you don't want to speak, just drop your thoughts in the chat. The good thing about Zoom is that we'll have access to the chat afterwards, which is a benefit. And then after each session, we'll circulate the slides to everybody in the community and also the minutes as well. So how we kind of envisage these sessions to run. So we've put in an hour and a half call based on the number of work streams. And obviously this is the first one, so we'll just see how it goes. As I've mentioned, we've established an initial steering committee who will present the initial work streams. So we're going to go through the top level topic, what it is and why it's been chosen. And then also what the committee's come up with as some early objectives that we think might be straightforward enough to work on or take away into your own workplaces. But then after each one, obviously we appreciate there's lots of different sites, lots of different requirements, different sizes and scales. So we'll open it up to the community, so to guys to discuss and agree. So if we do work stream 1 as an example, we'll get that explained why it's been chosen, initial actions that we've looked at, open it up to the floor, to the community and say, is that right? Are we on the right track? We need to come off. Does something need to go on? And between us as an electrical safety community, we'll agree what those tangible actions are that we can work on. And we'll look to review that every month. The aim would be to do this once a month online, and within 6 months after the event, so around April time, possibly look to have an in-person review, which we can facilitate so we can try and come together, not full conference scale, but again, just to revalidate where we are we on the right track? Have we made progress? Then anything that we need to try and tweak or adjust to try and make sure we're working on the priorities. So the steering group will own the work streams, and ideally the steering and or community can take away the actions, work on them where they can in some way or form. So it may not fully apply, but part of it might. And what we really want to encourage on this is if you're doing something at your site that aligns with the work streams, or if you think everybody else can learn something from. So if it's a good practice, if you're doing a lockout and tagout process that you think works great, it would be really good to start that dialogue, just reach out and we can have a discussion, include it, and hopefully have you present it on the next session or the session after that, or ideally lessons learned as well. What hasn't worked? What have you tried? And what hasn't really worked out very well? Because we don't often find those things out until something's gone wrong or we've invested in something and it hasn't actually paid off in the way that we thought. So I'd really encourage that if we can do that. And the ideal thing would be we do this every month. We have the in-person session in 6 months after the event to try and make sure we're on the right track and just generate a bit more momentum where it might tail off after 6 months. Hopefully it doesn't, but it's always good to come together. It's always better in person. And then hopefully we can have a 2026 event hosted by Scanware again in October 26 approximately. And the ideal situation would be for us to reflect and ask the question from the last one in 2025, when we had all the sharing and collaboration, have we actually got any better as an industry in electrical safety? Have we moved that dial in a positive direction? And I think that would be great to actually reflect. We're not going to change the world in 12 months, but it'll be so good just to say that we have actually done some positive changes together as a team, and that we can notably see some difference in things that other people can learn from. If we can standardize things where we can, then that would be a definite win, I think. So as I mentioned, we established an initial steering committee. This might move and change, but just to start things off, it was I think we've established a lot of people as we've started this on with the speakers to start with, and obviously that's grown and moved on from the discussions. So I'll just we can just go around and introduce to the committee. You know me, I'm Dan Henderson, the Global Head of Electrical Safety and Partnerships from Scanware, and I'll be hopefully trying to chair as we go through. I'll pass
Hey everyone, glad to see everyone here today. Wayne Hopkins. I am the Electrical and Commissioning Safety Program Manager for East Region here at Google.
Jay is not here to. That's over to you, Alan.
Good morning, everybody. Alan Roach, VP Commissioning and Integration for Stack Infrastructure within the Chicago area, but I oversee the whole commissioning program for all North America for Stack.
Perfect. Cody.
Hey everyone, my name is Cody Fleming. I am the operations electrical subject matter expert for Align Data Centers. My responsibilities go from construction all the way into operations, verifying that we have high reliability for our customers. Thank you.
Is that you, Chad?
Hi, I'm Chad Vargo. I work at Microsoft. I'm a EHS program manager supporting our global data centers.
Is that just you, Janine, then, is it?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Master.
That's all right. It's Matt Morgan. I'm with MC Dean. I'm safety manager and electrical safety SME, and that's it.
Thanks, Matt.
Janine Lida, and lead facilitator for the Data Center Safety Council. And I also have Julie, who I'll let introduce herself as well.
Julie Krieger-King, and I'm just here representing the Data Center Safety Council as well. Thank you.
Perfect. So there's some people that aren't here, but they've been involved in the process, and there's been some others who've been involved in the process that now aren't on here. But I think this will, grow and change and morph as we go. But we should have some, key people that are here throughout, involved in the work streams. So work stream 1, I'll now pass you over to the committee to talk through that and why it is.
Thanks, Daniel. We're going to talk about commissioning and the transition to operations. So, if you were to ask me what's the riskiest part of building a data center, to me, it's the most dangerous is when we're turning things on and we're handing over the keys to operations, right? So those are two key areas that we're going to focus on. That transition from commissioning operations when things go from being temporary to permanent, right? Theory is reality, right? There's no failures. So the first time the failure is just a delay to cost or schedule, right? It's uptime, it's safety, it's reputation. So talking about the first time energizations, it's the first time that the equipment's going to operate at full power. So it's when those electrical faults can become arc flash hazards, right? We talked at the conference about had everybody raise their hand how many arc flashes have people seen upon initial energization, and most of the room's hands were still up when I asked if people knew of 5 incidents over the last year. Incomplete isolation procedures can create safety exposure, right? So we'll talk about, another group will talk about lockout, tagout after this. Load imbalance, grounding issues, equipment misconfiguration. Can't tell how many times we've popped the breaker because somebody, put the wrong number into a load bank controller. So this safe test environment, prior to energization now becomes a significant issue, right? Where we've got human safety, you've got equipment, you've got the actual mission, the production schedule of the data center that you're delivering. Temporary systems all play a crucial role into getting buildings across the finish line, right? Things need to take and consider is temporary power feeds, any kind of jumper or bypass, temporary cooling or temp water systems to support the testing, any alarm monitoring that's temporary while we're doing this, partial control sequences, control modifications. These temporary systems are typically less redundant, more manually controlled, manually operated, higher dependency on human beings to be operating them. So the problem is not that they exist. They sit in this gap, right, between construction safety rules and the operational rigor, and it's about ownership. Who's going to own that temporary system? Who's going to understand that the plan has changed, and how does that affect our temporary system? Because you may not be used to having that temporary system in place. And then turnover to operations. So this handover liability, I think it's a good term there. So it's that critical change of accountability when that responsibility is usually shared between construction, commissioning agent, vendors, and the quality teams. And now just operations owns the facility, right? There's no overlap there, right? Failures are no longer project issues; they're service disruptions or SLA violations. It becomes a lot harder to get warranty enforcement. Doing root cause investigations become a little bit more difficult during operations because everyone that was there for construction is now gone. Operational teams take on the risk for the systems they may not fully trust yet or understand. And that's the key, I think, is to try and solve that, is to make sure that operational teams understand the risk that they're taking on. They understand the issues that they had with the UPSs during construction and commissioning, and they understand that the problem that they see a certain problem. Hey, this UPS constantly had problems. Let's make sure we go back to the vendor and either try to get this equipment upgraded or replaced. So that turnover process, if it's rushed or incomplete, right, I've seen it. That knowledge doesn't transfer, risk doesn't transfer cleanly. Fault ownership. Things can become very ambiguous. So, and when that happens, investigations are harder and lessons get lost. So, what good looks like, and that's part of what we're talking about here, is try to create some standard checklists and create a turnover to ops checklist. So if there's people that are out there that don't feel like they have a good turnover to ops checklist, right, we can work to create a better one, collaborate and share each other's turnover checklists, right? The risks happen when the operators aren't there witnessing the system testing. The emergency procedures aren't rehearsed beforehand. So what good looks like is the commissioning agent is going to say, we're about to go test this chiller, and the ops team is right there with them in tow, right? They're watching the plant. They're watching the plant get up to its full load, because you're not going to either recording that information or documenting the numbers that they're seeing, the pressures, temperatures, and they're going to document all that, so that because when in 2 years from now is when maybe they'll see the max full load on the building. All right. So what's gonna, if that person then leaves, how is that knowledge transferred 2 years down the line? So a great transition, right, should have very clear energization authority. You should have real scenarios, MOPS, your SOPs should all be vetted out beforehand. Use the commissioning agent to help vet some of those. No surprises. When the operations team takes on something, they should know every little issue that they've had through all their issues logs, and every issue that issues that were issues through construction. I'm not saying this very well. So sometimes you got a problem piece of equipment, right? You want to make sure that you're tracking that and that you're coordinating with the vendor. And so it's no surprise to you or the vendor when that issue creeps up again, right? So that side-by-side operations with during level 4 and level 5 testing is key for the operations team. And that final turnover it's a process, not a single event. Just like commissioning is a process, not an event. Commissioning isn't just getting out there and doing the testing. It's everything from design review all the way to turnover to operations. And that turnover to operations isn't just a single finite day. It's AST's done, ops, you got it. There's a lot of work that's got to go into before that IST is done. So, the overall goal to me is to not just transfer those assets to the operations team, but transfer confidence that the equipment is ready, it's tested, or if there are discrepancies, you're very aware of them. And Wayne, you got anything else to add?
Yeah, Alan, great stuff. Obviously, like you and many others here on this call, if there's anything that keeps me up at night is those L3 energizations that take place, along with the L4 scripts that are being operated, right? And then, how do we control that? What are our best practices? What are our tools? What are our lessons learned? And creating this commissioning safety checklist, can bring a lot of value, especially there's a lot of EHS folks, in our industry that may not know what others know as subject matter experts, and having a document that we can provide, industry specific, right? That says, hey, look for here, how are you controlling there? Look for arc flash. These kind of items will be helpful for those folks, right? And then back to that temp power, I just want to hit on that for a second. right? More and more as we energize systems and we bring our data centers up, right? We're utilizing temp power to commission, right? And we're not talking about just your construction power. We're rolling generators in so we can commissioning products so well before our substations are even energized, right? And this can become very problematic, right? Not having good temporary one lines or SCAF studies done on your temp power, right? So having these things in place, knowing where they are, knowing that they're integrated into the permanent systems, a lot of folks end up missing, okay, well, we're energizing permanent power now, but we forgot we still have our temp power in there and tied in, right? So it's very important when it comes down to knowing your systems and knowing where things are and having the right tools for that, and like Alan's saying, creating these checklists will be beneficial. But obviously when it comes to this, we're going to, leverage off of all of the experience with the folks on this call, right? Give us your ideas. Tell us what your best practices are, because that's what we're going to use overall to help build these things out. Back to you, Alan.
Yeah, no, thanks, Wayne. I think that transition from temp power to utility, that's key. I've seen issues where things get dropped in that transition, and we've had to kind of upgrade our all right, going forward. The first time we did it, kind of screwed it up, and breaker settings, right? So making sure that you get your settings in, make sure they get readjusted for utility, and so that we learned the lesson, and now we've implemented procedures to make sure that never happens again, right? So. Yeah.
So I guess do we all of the hands, for this one, the commissioning, first energization and things there, all of those hands at the conference that were raised on who's experienced an arc flash in the last 12 months, I think that tells us the why. I think it's on there for a reason, isn't it? This is something that is avoidable in most occurrences, so it should definitely be a priority item as a work stream. Yeah, it's
avoidable, but I think if we don't take important steps to implement proper procedures, the number's only going to increase, right? The amount of new people you're pumping into the industry, and with these AI factories that are going, right, we're trying to build the same amount of build 20x the capacity in the same amount of time, and so that it just creates more statistical risk there, right? A lot more pieces of equipment, a lot more opportunities for failures to happen.
Yeah, so I guess you guys are in industry, in those actions that you think are important. Should we open it up to the floor and see if anyone in the community's got anything to feedback on that? If anyone wants to speak and say whether that's the right thing that we should be working on, if it's what you want us to be working on, or support with, I guess. Does anybody want to chip in, I guess, with your inputs?
What I will say, Dan, is in the chat, people are definitely saying that a checklist would be very beneficial.
Yeah.
There's a few different comments here. So from Jose, there's a need for commissioning documentation for turnover to operations. As Alan said, it might be a year or two before the building is tested to maximum. Phil's made some good comments here as well. It definitely seems like people agree that this is a good direction to go in. But again, yes, people feel free to unmute, feel free to chat, Q&A.
No, I think those comments just kind of reiterate only that definitely action 1.1 is something that needs to be worked on, something that needs to be unified where it can be. I suppose if we were going to work on those, then what would the next steps be? What would we look to do? Would somebody within the committee be happy to share what they do and ask for feedback? Some of it might be critical, obviously. You might be opening yourself up to, to some feedback, I guess, positive and negative. But if, is that something we can do on the next session? Maybe share what someone, if we're not going to have time to do everything, but do we share a commissioning safety process that we do now somewhere and ask for feedback? Does this look good? Does this fit what you do? Any issues you foresee?
1 second, and Anthony wants to speak. I'm just going to give it a good test.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Very good. Just on this, Dan, is this something that also comes up with cross-boundary responsibilities?
Potentially, I mean, because a lot of this is going to be based within the construction and commissioning part, those first energizations. So a lot of the boundaries are going to be, it's going to be pretty much under the GCs or the EC's control at this point. So, I mean, it would be if we were in, if this was, if there's issues in operational, but I think because this bit where it sits in commissioning, it probably more sits where it's under the control of the GCs and the ECs.
Yeah, I was more thinking of the actual transition from the commissioning to operations.
Yeah, once it goes into
gets handed
operations,
over
definitely, there would
to make
be.
sure it's a smooth
Yeah.
transfer of responsibility.
Yeah. What was it? Were you going to add something on there if it was around that?
Yeah.
No, just go on. Sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
I was just going to say, Dan, back to that checklist. I mean, I've got a basic checklist that we could use. I'd be happy to share that out, and we can build off of that as a template, and then can share that with you to add to the meeting notes if you like.
Yeah, I think by the next month we could easily create, Wayne and I could kind of collaborate and create a turnover to ops checklist that's just kind of in general, and we can kind of create some notes, and then so anybody could take that checklist and then adapt it to their site. And what I would encourage you to do is don't just say this is the end all be all checklist. Modify it for every building, for every turnover, each phase within the building, right? Not every building's built the same. Not every phase to phase is the same, right? There's different issues, especially when you turn over the very first phase versus turning over the very last phase of building when everyone's going to go away. So I would say you got to take that as a base, but then question everybody on the project. All right, what's missing here? Right, what can we add that is very specific to this project? Because those things are out there.
Yeah, it's got to be specific, isn't it, to your application?
Mm-hmm. But we can include things in there like if you're using temp power for your site utility, hey, think about these things.
Yeah,
exactly.
Is there anything else that we want to talk on that or add? I'd like to try and stick to 15 minutes per work stream if possible. So we'll be looking to move on in 2 minutes. If we've got nothing to add, though, we can jump on because these are wide topics and quite deep. So I suspect, if people have got things to add, it'll either go on or short at certain sessions. So is there anything else that we've got either in? Does anyone else want to speak in the community or in the chat? Have we had anything else come in?
There's been a few different bits and bobs. Phil's mentioned here Facility Grid and CX Alloy have these templates. Dan says it still comes into play between substation DC during phase delivery between ops and the GC. So definitely some bits which can inform the templates for sure.
No, that's perfect. I think that's really good. I mean, once we send these out, so we'll send the minutes and the slides. If anyone then, because we can be a sort of central location where we can pull these together and share them out, obviously, and I suppose track where they've gone. So if anyone wants to share what they've got, or if you want to set up a separate collaboration, like so if Alan and Wayne are working on this one, if you want to work with those guys as well and see if you can pull something together as a collaboration and present it on the next one, I think that's a really good idea.
Should we keep moving then, Dan?
Yes. So workstream 2. I'll pass you over to Wayne again.
Hey everybody. A couple of our panelists had some issues today. So taking this one, we looked at these work streams, and this second work stream we thought has a lot of value, right? Because we see differences with lockout, tagout, controlling hazardous energy, whether it be construction, during commissioning activities, and then certainly the differences with operational, using different procedures and different devices, right? We have different permit to works. We have, MOPS that we're using in construction that may necessarily not be used during operational. So we wanted to dive deeper into this, right? And provide a little more information that we can, share out with everyone. And there are some tools, right? Some of the actions that we discussed, right? Like here in the first 2 quarters of next year is looking at a side-by-side side-by-side gap analysis of, our programs. For example, here we just recently performed a global side-by-side gap analysis where we looked at our general contractors' energy control plans and our own single source of truth for energy control. And we said, hey, let's analyze these differences. We use tools like AI tools to help with that. Obviously, if you were to do a side-by-side analysis, it could take a month or more to do these properly. But the tools are out there, and I won't speak to any particular, but we used Gemini and NotebookLM as great tools to help with that, right? So these things are out there. They're good to use to, again, what we got out of that was saying, okay, here are these gaps, right? How do we identify those gaps? We partnered with our contractor partners and said, hey, these identified as gaps, let's close these out. We put action plans together with that. And this all is going as we are moving faster and faster, right? I know everyone on this call is feeling it. We all thought 2025 was going to be a hectic and crazy year, which it sure proved that way. But as the world is asking for more and more off of deliveries with data centers and we're not looking and measuring by, megawatts. We're looking at gigawatts, right, of delivery, right? And that means we're building faster and faster. And to make sure that we have tools in place to make sure that, we're providing a safe workforce for our workers. And when it comes to energy management, this is going to be extremely important, right? That, as Alan talked about, during our conference, it seemed like everybody in the room raised their hand that they've witnessed an arc flash, right? One arc flash is too many. And then folks had their hands up how about 5 in a year? And that's just uncalled for. And if we're moving faster and faster, like we talked about in the conference, 26 and 27 is going to be crazy. So it behooves us to make sure that, hey, we have to be aligned on this. We have to have our best practices to bear here. And what are those, and how do we identify those, and then how do we work together to make sure those processes are in place, such as like we talked about in that last action was the template for commissioning activities and a checklist. And then in action 2, is piloting a unified lockout tagout, digitized lockout tagout systems. Now we understand this is something that's new to many of us, but there are digitized lotto systems that's going to help as we go faster and faster, having something in place that alleviates the human error, right? The decision to skip a step in a mop. Well, a digitized process puts blockers out there that prevents that from happening, right? You cannot go to the next step without making sure that you've completed step 1, right? You can't energize the like equipment falsely because you're selecting one nomenclature and that's not what you've identified with your digital lockout tagout system. So there's some great stuff out there, great tools out there that we'd like to bring to bear and talk about through these items. So with that being said, I would open it up to the group. What does everyone think on this call?
Nothing come through just yet, Wayne, on this, but I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, well, again, there's some great stuff here. I know Jimmy and there's a couple that are working on this workflow, so we can identify those, and whoever wants to help with this, we'll get you to Ben and Dan and get some help with that, and we look forward to hearing from you and any messages.
And if some people haven't got a digital system, again, within the community, there are people that have got digital systems in use. So again, we're not going to advocate for one over another, or try and sell one and say, if you buy this will be the best product and it'll sort all your problems out. But again, if this is something we can potentially have one of either the community or the steering group possibly present what they've got, how it works, and and what works for them. So it might be again something that we can try and demonstrate on one of these calls, just to give people that haven't had the experience or chance to have a look at these systems an opportunity to see what it looks like.
There are
Yeah,
some
that's right.
comments here now. So Sammy's put, who is exactly performing this gap analysis is one point here.
Yeah, Sammy, that's a great question. And so what we did here at Google, we went to our general contractors and we asked them to provide us your energy management plan, their energy management plans. And then, everybody has their energy control plan. So we have ours, they have theirs, and we wanted to analyze and verify that they're in alignment, right? So when we did that gap analysis, that's where we identified these areas in which we can better and bolster their programs, so that they're in turn managing their ECs and MCs, likewise, right? A lot of times we see on a project site where a GC has maybe multiple electrical contractors, right? And they're running 3 different energy control plans because one electrical contractor has their plan and others, and on and on. Providing a gap analysis over all of these plans brings those into one manageable control plan for the whole site that everyone works to, including your owner reps and vendor techs and things like that. So great
So
question.
did you do that as the owner? So
the owner, we did. That's right.
Yeah.
And then provided our GCs with those findings, and working through that, we decided there was so much value in that. We got so much great feedback from our GCs and ECs that we're going to do it again in 26 midstream.
No, that's really good. So I mean, this is so these actions, what we're hoping are areas that we think people can take away and work on, where they've got the same gaps that have been experienced by, I suppose, what we discussed in the steering group. So if that is a gap, again, it might be something that possibly the steering group can, if something that we've done or been part of, might be able to talk through that. But I think essentially these actions are kind of things that, it might not fully apply to your organization. It might apply partially. It might apply not at all. So I think it's trying to pull from these, the whole overarching topic or theme is this lockout tagout in your energy plan. So it might be a case that you're an operational site and some of these bits wouldn't apply because you might not be working through a GC or an EC. But it might be a case that you can conduct a gap analysis on what you do against industry best practice or something like that. And I'm sure people on the steering committee could share what they've got, or what they did as an example, and maybe it's something that someone could take away back to their work site, their region, and possibly do the same thing. But so maybe that's something that we can do. Obviously, if it's of interest, again, drop it in the chat, or if you want to talk through it, we can maybe include it in one of the sessions that are coming next month or the month after. Just think there's so many people with experience in the community. I'm sure someone's got something to share on that.
There's some more notes here, Dan. So from Carl, ULI, uniform line identifiers are mandatory for NERC/FERC regulated facilities. That should be the standard DCs also use. Yeah, I'll keep going on that one. So from Kevin, unified ECP sounds great. This would help reduce redundant work and help with a smooth ops turnover, especially if the lotto procedures are ready to go day one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. And then the last one from Jose, a practical demonstration would be useful to see how AI is reading the objectives.
Yeah, is that something that I mean, you guys have done it, Wayne? Is that
Yep.
I know throwing everything on you, but is that something maybe you could demonstrate? I mean, if it's going to be a time thing, maybe a case that we can't do everything on the next call, but pick one or two of the actions that we've got that I can actually demonstrate things on. Is that something that you'd be willing to do?
100%, right? And I can show the tools that I used and how those outcomes and provide those resources, because it was very valuable and easy, much more easy to use. So 100%, yeah, I can do that, Dan.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything
Thank
else
you.
in there?
Uh,
Ben?
No, that's it. We can keep going for now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So workstream 3, I'll pass you over to Cody.
Hey, hello everyone. Covering arc flash and electrical hazard management. Specific, this is kind of a broad topic, and it kind of touches through on some other work streams that we're going to be working through. But the idea is that arc flash labels are subject to change. There are multiple changes throughout the construction process, different revs to your SCCS. So how do we, as an industry, how do we as a committee kind of address this issue to create a safe standard product that gets turned over to operations? In my role, if you heard me speak at the conference, I like to tell stories. So a specific story that kind of comes to mind for this one, where I was doing an audit at one of my sites, showing the ops team how an SCC audit is supposed to be conducted. And we found that the different phases of the data center, even though they're the same equipment, same make, model, and whatnot, had various settings. Not many, but discrepancies. And we tracked that down to the fact that the SCCS changed between projects or mid-project. So how do we validate that our equipment is set correctly, is labeled correctly, and keeping everyone in construction and operations as safe as possible with the most up-to-date information? So action 3.1, finalize a clear arc flash study ownership matrix defining who is responsible for data collection, calculation, and labeling. So that is a bit more broad than what that action states. Data collection, calculations, labeling, that depends who owns that, depends on who owns that specific phase. If something changes mid-project, then perhaps construction would be taking over and doing a full audit after the update. But then there's projects where the entire building SCCS will be updated and certain phases will be turned over to operations. So ownership would be shared for completion of that action item between your platform delivery and your operations teams. And a mandate that all high-risk equipment is pre-labeled with temporary arc flash labels during construction for worker protection before final commissioning. This is a requirement. There's several different standards that govern this. There's NFPA 70E Article 130 discusses field labeling and safety training. NFPA 70, so NEC, discusses the equipment rating versus fault current, and then the ANSI and NETA ATS is verification of circuit breakers settings. So another story that I've seen, you will get your calculations from an engineering firm, KW, whoever it might be, or maybe your own internal engineering teams. So, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that the equipment can be set that way. Something that I've seen in the past is that certain make model breakers, their variability in their current ratings will change the higher you go. So let's say your current setting for an instantaneous needs to be 15,000 and 15,500. Say that. However, certain make models can only, after they go past 10,000, they can only go in 1,000 amp increments. So how do we account for that? How do we account for the fact that, okay, so I should default to the lower setting because that's the safer. So let's say 15,000. Okay, well, how does that trickle down to the entire system? Because when these studies are turned over to you, they're given with pre-calculated TCCs, showing the entire system how the fault current will behave throughout your topology. So if you're adjusting one based off the make model requirements of an upstream piece of equipment, how does that impact you lower? So some certain things that like kind of pop out into my mind, and Alan and Wayne, discussed it. We talked about temporary power, the turnover to permanent power at the substations. So what does that turnover look like? Could there be an SCCS audit that's a standardized template? And that's a universal problem. That can be, that process would be able to be followed by construction and operations teams. Here's what you have. Here's where we're trying to get to. Let's find the discrepancies, catalog them, and then turn over a quality product to our operations teams. I know a lot of teams use tamper seals. Tamper seals are great, but tamper seals don't always have a whole lot of information on them regarding dates or what that tamper seal pertains to, and they don't necessarily have to, as long as they're cataloged in some certain way. But a good tamper seal program is necessary to validate that your arc flash is good in the future, because when it gets turned over to operations, I know my construction counterparts don't have to deal with this as much, but you have the 5-year analysis that you have to do to revalidate your SCCS. Things change. Right now I'm helping out with a couple projects where our customers are attempting to change the breaker sizes on certain things. So that will impact our SCCS. So then we have to go back through, revalidate everything, do a full comparison. So my goal would be to kind of work towards a common process that integrates the requirements of NFPA, ANSI, and puts them all into one template that we can kind of just refer to and as a community agree upon and say, this is what we should be checking. This is how we can go about doing this in a decisive manner. That way it gets turned over and all of our people are safe throughout the project. What is this supposed to be? Well, the arc flash label says this. Well, that was 2 revs ago. So actually you need to be in a 40 cal. So that's really all I have right now. My fellow speaker wasn't able to join today. So I will open it up to the room and hear about anything you guys are doing to mitigate this risk, or any ideas you may have. The other concern is permanent equipment is being fed by temporary power. The label is based off the eventual permanent feed. Yeah, absolutely. So that should be accounted for. If you're going to use a temporary gen, you have to account for cable lengths. You have to account for the voltage rating. You have to account for everything. So yeah, absolutely. If you're going to be using a temporary system, you should have an engineering study done to accomplish the safety requirements for that temporary system. Absolutely. And that can be included in this, and that in a way is a change to the SCCS, so you could definitely, and I could share the draft arc flash label design noted as a magnet and dry erase for all 3 periods. All right, David, I think I saw your comment earlier. You work in renewables. Yeah, current construction, commissioning, and operation periods. Yeah, there's dry erase.
I can unmute David now if you want, Cody. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, please open it up.
I'm not in renewables. No, I work for Siemens Energy. We build gas insulated substations and air insulated substations, as well as install transformers and things like that to provide power for the data centers. And we have some projects right. Just to say this, I've run into this issue. Chris was mentioning some kind of a initiative, and forgive my kind of newness to this, around the design or construction, commissioning, and operation period. And we ran into this recently because we have these what we call gradual cutovers, where we transfer control of the power to the customer, and the lockout tagout for the particular circuit might be in a control room half a mile away. So as you can probably imagine, that's a little bit error provocative when you have a lot of opportunity, and it's just a lot of complexity within the work environment in terms of many tasks going on simultaneously. So, to speak to what you were saying, we did kind of come up with the fact that we needed to come up with a temporary arc flash label. I'm glad to share it. We are more than willing to take back any comments to that. It is not complete, but as we design, manufacture, and install LCC cabinets, and then procure and install, other electrical cabinets, we have less of what I would consider an arc flash risk, but we definitely have some hazardous release of energy within those cabinets. And it's kind of our duty. We take it as our duty to kind of label them and make sure that as we hand this over to the customer for their control, that there is some kind of an arc flash label that is prominently displayed on the actual door. So I don't know if that's of value, but I thought I would share it.
That's great. Thank you, David. Really appreciate that. And please share.
I did have one other thing. We have been doing bow tie analysis in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of our controls. And I don't know if anybody's looking at that in terms of, gap analysis as we kind of understand how people interface with the particular types of equipment that they are working on and within. So
I think we're going to look at like competencies and training. I know that's kind of separate, and the jump ahead work streams, but it's I mean the people element definitely. So maybe that's potentially something that we can cover in there.
It's preventative and mitigative controls, and it's
Yeah.
PPE, and it's also training and all those things. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah, if that's all right, David, if you could like just get in touch after, and maybe that's something that you could share on one of the upcoming sessions. Just go
Sure.
through, this is what we do from a temporary perspective, and then open it up maybe to feedback from the community. Would it work for them? How does it work for you? Is anything that we can learn from and do better?
Sure. Glad to do it.
Oh, brilliant, thank you. Was there anything else in there, Ben? I think you covered it as well, didn't you, Cody? With that initial, you think from the design, from the sort of level 0 part of your the data center design process, and you're doing that initial modeling work. Obviously, they are all assumed cable lengths and things there, but I think you covered it as well with the protective device. You're putting in there sort of distances, fault level or prospective fault level, and then working out in available fault levels that are there, and then you're putting in what that coordination looks like in terms of pickup times and current. When you get into the procurement, you probably don't know the types of relay, the models of relay at that point. So again, can those actually be input into the relays? Or a lot of the time it might not have that setting, not that exact setting, or you might need to slightly move it, which obviously has an impact on the fault levels that are there. I think you kind of covered it there, but again, that's something else to take into consideration, isn't it? When we're doing that initial modeling, is it actually validated for the exact relay that's going in? Or once we've started that procurement piece and we know what relay is going to go in, is it then updated to reflect the relay type in the model, whether it's ETAP or SKM or Dig Silent or whatever the modeling software is, to then make sure once it's actually in place, can we actually put those settings in? Because often we can't, can we, if it's not possible within the in the electronic relay settings.
Yeah, and in a perfect world, the design team, the engineers have all that information available to them. However, these studies are being done years out, these drawings are being done years out, procurement changes, timelines change, everything changes. And as long as there's a good interaction between design and construction and operations,
I've seen it where relays have been discontinued by the time you've actually built.
Yeah,
relays are obsolete, so they've had to use an alternative. And those settings can't be put in because the relay doesn't exist anymore. It does exist, but you'd have to get them on eBay. So it's it's the world we're in, isn't it? Everyone's constantly moving forward, including switchgear and protection relay manufacturers. So yeah. Does anything else come in, Ben?
Just one final one, then we'll move on to 4. So this is from Carl. The main issue Renewables struggles with is incomplete work or abnormal conditions that can invalidate the engineering basis for the arc flash label. For switching orders, the assumption is the information is wrong and must be brought down and validated before the start switching.
I like that. Trust but verify. Absolutely. I haven't worked in renewables, but everywhere I've been in operations, it's kind of the same mentality is trust but verify. It's definitely important to validate what you have available to you, because especially if you're going to be the one standing in front of the gear in your PPE, you want to make sure that you're in the right PPE. So yeah, absolutely, I completely agree with that.
Especially renewables, from my experience from being in that industry as a high voltage senior authorized person, is they all look the same, especially in wind. You've got big metal, steel towers, all grey, battleship grey. So it's other than like physically checking your switching program, checking the labels on the gear, making sure, because a lot of people I know have gone to the wrong location, purely signage being incorrect, and maybe signage on the outside of the wind turbine as an example, but then the actual signage on the switchgear being correct and they've gone to the wrong location. So it's much easier to do somewhere like that where everything looks the same, in comparison to maybe on a fixed building where they're in a set location and things like that. But it does happen. You've got to make sure you're in the right place, definitely.
Good stuff. So just before we move on, Dan, any specific notes, I guess, for the workstream 3 actions for next time? David sent through the note, and we'll see if David's willing to come on to the next session to present. Is there anything further?
No, I think that's really good. I think there's obviously some clear things that we've got there, but as an outline, it would be good just to have that discussion, and maybe if David's happy to present what they do, it's maybe something that everyone else can learn from, or give feedback, and see if it's something that everyone else can adopt, maybe as one part of this.
Good stuff. No, perfect. Thank you, Cody, as well.
Yep, thank you. And then workstream 4, I will pass you over to Chad. Hopefully this is right now.
Yep, you got it. All right, yeah. Workstream 4 has to do with essentially training and competency, right? Understanding what training is required for those that are qualified to do electrical work.
Yeah, I've got the title wrong on this of the content's right, just not the title. Apologies.
Yes, no, that's okay. So in really understanding the base level of competency and skills that are required to do these, high risk work activities when it comes to electrical work. And a couple of the actions. For the first one, we have this concept of maybe creating a standardized approach when it comes to electrical safety or qualified electrical worker training, and ensuring a few different things. One is that, the emphasis is on safety, understanding that there are, technical knowledge and skills required to do the work safely, and then also ensuring there's a practical component as well, right? Somebody that is going to be trained to do a live dead live check should actually be able to demonstrate on a multimeter that they can in fact do this successfully, and not just watch a computer module and then go out there and perform the work, right? So really the emphasis is ensuring that you have all three components. You have the background, the book knowledge, I'll call it, and also the practical knowledge as well, because those are all, of course, key factors. And then I'll pass it to Matt Morgan to talk about action 4.2.
Thanks, Chad. So along with training and execution of everything in the other three work streams, one of the items we wanted to start working on is the fact that data centers are being built really fast, and even noticed it in the conference that whenever we talked about lessons learned, it was always from another industry. We've built a lot of data centers, and there's no reason we shouldn't have a good setup to where we can have some lessons learned. One of the things I've found in a couple of fact finding or root cause analysis from multiple sites is there's always one person that said, oh, I remember this happened about 6 months ago at this other site. And sometimes they're the same owners or the same GC. So in some cases, it's because we've moved on to try to meet deadlines, but there's ample opportunity that's been mentioned multiple times that the use of AI could probably streamline this process to try to create a kind of a spot to where we could verify that when we're about to go into something that we have reviewed when someone else has gone into something like this, and things that may have occurred or may not have occurred, or mistakes that were made, or procedural issues as we work through improving, standardizing some of these items. On top of that is one of the things that we've already discussed with the Qualified Electrical Worker Program, which is basically an expansion of the minimum requirements that you see in a lot of quick moving environments, where they just ask the electrician if it's NFPA 70E certified, which is a very broad request for something that may be specific to the folks. Also within creating those qualified electrical workers to be specific for their maturity level, what they're doing, task specific, but along with this, going through trends and issues you may have run into, it also allows you to adjust training and competency requirements as you phase through different levels of build, as you bring in from initial build, getting your commissioning team trained up, qualified, and proficient before you actually start commissioning equipment, so that is something with a look ahead. And those are basically some of the things we're focusing on, is phases of training needs, along with integrating lessons learned and items to ensure that we're getting task specific or phase-specific training involved also to change over to the maturity or qualification level, such as electrical safety SMEs. If you don't have a electrical safety SME on your site and you're running the show as an EC, that needs to be something that could be improved upon. And they need to be trained up early to know what right looks like, and even more importantly, to know what wrong looks like. And then energy marshals, and then advanced QEW programs throughout the phase. That's, I think that covers 4.2 along with expanding on the QEW program a little bit.
Thank you, Matt. Donna mentioned in the chat that she would like to speak. Donna, if you're free now, raise your hand. I can let you go into more detail. Donna, if you just press raise hand, I'll be able to do the rest for you. There we go.
Gotcha. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I love this. And I was just going to point out on 4.1, last year there was quite a bit of work done by the Data Center Safety Council. That we generated a white paper on this exact topic of what needs to be included and what makes really a good, effective, qualified person training. One of it is Matt was kind of talking about NFPA certified, right? Like part of that whole comment is what drove a lot of the work, because there's no such thing, right? The NFPA doesn't certify people, and they lay out the criteria of what should be included in the training, but that they're not a certifying body. And you have these different training firms out there that are calling it a certified course, and they're the certifying body, but there's no consistency if you really start digging into it and what's being delivered. And so that's exactly what the DCSC tried to communicate and help the industry understand, a little bit about clarifying that confusion, but then also saying, if you're looking for a good qualified electrical person's training, here's what the collective group that was in the DCSC and this working committee through the research that they did and looking at the different programs that the various members had. The white paper is based on that as kind of some guidelines on what good looks like. So anyway, my point is, if that can be of help to this working group, it might be a start. Maybe you can build on that that white paper or leverage it in some way. So happy to, if anyone needs access to that, let me know.
No, it's really good. I mean, is that something that someone from the Data Center Safety Council could maybe talk through on a future session? To talk through, I know you probably put a lot into it, so it's probably a lot to cover in in partial. But is it possible to like kind of summarize key parts of that and maybe talk through? I know you're opening yourself up to a little bit of maybe feedback from everyone that's on the call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to add, actually, Donna, if you don't mind, I helped facilitate that project group, and I would say there's many opportunities to expand on what was done on that white paper. Really, the main focus was not necessarily qualified electrical workers, but kind of the other subtask engineers for operations specifically. And I think, there's other tasks across construction, commissioning, and operations where the types of training can be more built out and defined than beyond what this white paper was kind of calling out for operations specific. But I would say that some of the gap analysis on training has been done at the pre-work that kind of Donna alluded to as well for that. So happy to talk about that in the future.
Just seems like a great point of collaboration, right? And maybe a jump start on the overall project you're proposing here.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, it's definitely a point to build on or learn from, isn't it? I think stand on the shoulders of giants. That's what we're here to do, learn from others. And then on a point to add, again, I don't know if this is something to consider, but on 4.2, obviously where we've got lessons from being in like different industries in the past, often if we had an incident or a near miss regarding electrical safety, What my experience is obviously you'd go into an RCA and you'll come out with all the good stuff. What that looks like on the other side of it, how that's communicated out. It's often either site specific, so it might not go out into regional or national or global feedback loops to then get the message across. Some might do it better than others. But that's it's happened to someone, it could happen to somebody else, I guess, these near misses and these incidents. And I appreciate we're all kind of in the same industry here, but we will have, things like reputation and PR and stuff like that, and things to uphold. If it's something that you feel you've had an incident, potentially there's something where us as an independent, like at Scanware, we could potentially have that discussion, and maybe take something like put some protection in place, as in like an NDA or something like that, where it can just be totally stripped back to the actual just the event information rather than any site-based or specific photographs or anything like that, possibly. And then at least rather than have it just in company or at site, or it might be a case that you could use us as a conduit to, again, to not trace anything back, maybe just present it general across to this community. Within data centers, if it's happened at one place, it might happen at another. Again, I'm not saying that forms part of this, but if it's something that you think would be beneficial, I'm sure we'd be able to facilitate that if that's if you think that would help. I know from my experience, some things that I've had in my industries that I've worked in the past, I'm pretty sure I would have been glad of it if someone else has experienced it in the same industry and it had got to me before it actually happened to one of my sites. So if that's something that if you do have an incident or a near miss, which you think other people could learn from, and you think it's something actually the wider community could benefit from knowing about, happy if you want to reach out independently, and we can talk about putting any sort of protections in place to protect any reputations and things there. I'm sure we could facilitate. I don't know if that forms part of it, but yeah. Anything else coming in, Ben, on this one?
No, nothing in addition to that one. No, I'll keep an eye out. Anthony has just made a comment. I think it's that learning by sharing previous incident case studies, learning from someone else's mistakes, really.
Yeah, or just a sheer things happen, don't they? Sometimes it's no one's mistake, but sometimes things happen. Equipment fails. It could be environmental conditions, or a combination of things that have created this environment for an incident to occur. So and often, like, we do try and protect our industries and protect our companies and things like that. So yeah, I do agree, Anthony. Anything where we can learn and implement change before it actually happens is ideal. But it's got to be safe. I mean, people have got to be protected to share that information as well. So, but definitely something that we can support if that was if you think it's going to be of benefit. So, I mean, to the rest of the community, then, are these the right things within Workstream 4? Are we on the right line with? I know this is quite wide, isn't it? It's quite a wide. And as we start looking at, if you start looking at competencies and things, I think it's support from the Data Center Safety Council. It sounds like we've got a good starting point with this. But if there's anything else that you think we can, tailor or add to, take bits off, just if you want to pipe up, please do. If not, just drop something in the chat.
Dan, there is also the opportunity once we send around the slides, isn't there, for people to make any comments if they don't want to do them live, and we can reach out to them directly afterwards as well.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so I think if we've got nothing else coming in there.
No, let's keep going.
I think we've gone as far as we can go. So I know this is the first one, so it's new ground, I guess. I think it's great. The intention's great. What the outputs look like, hopefully, are I suppose as good as they can be. But it's everyone's evolving. Some people are at different stages, as Wayne and everyone's kind of covered. It's only going to keep growing, isn't it? So no one's alone. Everyone's in the same position. Some different positions to others, but it's the same pain points that we're all experiencing. So I guess this was a starting point. What we're going to look to do is, obviously most people will be going away for probably a Christmas break, so we're going to look to rationalize this with the steering committee and hopefully put some, tidy these up into, I suppose, something that we can look to review month by month. We're roughly there, but I think we're going to have to take the feedback, if anything that comes in between now and then, obviously just put it in there. But yeah, I think is there any questions from anybody online to do with this that you haven't covered, or anything that you want to include? If not, obviously you can get in touch outside of this, but just opening it back up to the floor. Anything there, Ben?
No, nothing at the moment.
Is there anything that the committee personnel want to get
Oh,
across?
sorry, one question has come through now. Sorry. One question from Sam. Is there a way to centralize information currently available on these topics? Is there a way to confirm we aren't reinventing the wheel?
I mean, we can hold it. We can kind of, but if people are going to be going away and working on work streams, we probably need to try and centralize until it's agreed, and then send those out. I would say probably because we're so many different organizations, it's probably best to do it, do you think, through us, Ben, and keep it in one place? So it's, if we're going to be facilitating the calls and the in-person meetings and conferences.
I think that would make sense. So, for example, once we do get the checklists organized and sorted, and we're all happy as a steering group and as collaboratively as a call, we would share that out for everyone to use. But we would hold the main template document, and then people adapt it to their environment, equipment. But as a baseline, we can hold that stuff as well as the meeting minutes and everything else that we learn in the meantime.
Okay.
If people are happy with that, of course.
Yeah, and then from the committee, is there anything that you guys want to discuss from what's gone on so far? Are you happy with what we've discussed? Anything you want to add?
Hey, Dan, can you hear me?
Yep.
I was just going to say, I appreciate everybody taking the time to jump on this call today. I know this was a first of a kind. I do feel there's a lot of value in this, and I really appreciate you and Ben and Scan when we're putting this together. I've seen, initiatives like this grow in such a way. And look here, we have 52 participants on this call today, and that's super outstanding for the first call ever. I think there's so much value in this. And for those on the call who can think of somebody who may bring more value or may want to hear what we're talking about here, please invite them. Know that these meetings are going to continue on a monthly basis, and that this is all about sharing information, best practices, lessons learned. We look for, everyone to help with this, right? No one has a cornerstone on the information market, right? There's so much out there, and the experience and wisdom of 52 participants that's on this call today is it's incredible, right? So please, pass the word around. January is coming soon, and we'll have this meeting again, and look forward to more participation. And again, thanks, Dan and Ben, for putting this together.
I appreciate you guys are living it and doing it, so it's it's over to, it's everyone as a community, isn't it? I think from my side of it, it's so sad when you see everyone collaborating and trying to promote the right thing and learn together and grow together, and then once you leave the conference, it's done, isn't it? So I think this is, it's new ground. It's totally new. I was really thinking, how will this go? But I think it's definitely the right way, just to open up a forum for the information sharing, the collaboration. And I'd love to be having a conference in 2026 and look back and go, what's changed since the last time? I think that's a key measure, isn't it? We can get so much information and stuff across in a conference, but what changes? And hopefully, if we can change part of this, then we've done something good, haven't we? Yeah, brilliant. Anyone else on the committee got anything to add?
Yeah, Cody. really appreciate everyone joining. Like Wayne said, this is a good turnout for the first time, and even if you're not on the panel, that doesn't mean your idea isn't good or valid. Speak up, add, subtract. We may not be right, we might be wrong. There might be a better way to do it out there. Just the only thing that matters is making people safer and keeping us going home every single night. So if there's a better way to do that, be a participant, add to that cause. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all echo that, don't we? Yeah, no, I think, well, if there's nothing else to add, I'll thank everyone for coming. I think it's been really productive, and if we don't speak before, everyone have a really good holidays and a Merry Christmas, and we'll catch up in January and hopefully rationalize what we're going to be working on and sharing some good information.